Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm Jim Goddard. John, welcome back to the show.
Jim, it's a pleasure to be back on Discovery Watch.
John, Radius Gold jumped sharply last week on results from its Amelia project in Mexico. Is this a discovery we should be watching?
Jim, this is an interesting play that I definitely think we should keep an eye on. Radius Gold is headed by Simon Ridgway, and it was for a very long time a prospect generator farm-out model company. In fact, back in that 2003-2008 bull market before Paul Van Eden retired as a newsletter writer, Radius and Altius were his favorite picks at any conference where he would tell everybody to avoid companies that do not farm out their prospects. Altius turned out to be a successful company for a variety of reasons, whereas Radius, after that crash in 2008, it kind of just became a cash-rich junior. I had it a bottom fish for a while, but I kind of lost interest in it because Simon decided to turn its cash-rich position into more of an investment issuer, and now they own sort of several $1 million worth of paper in other juniors. But a few years ago, the bug got to him again, and he has started assembling a portfolio of projects in Mexico, and the Amelia was one of them. It is a low sulfidation epithermal system. It's in the Sierra Madre range of western Mexico, where you have big gold-silver systems such as Dolores, Mulatos, El Solsal, and Metates, of which Metates is the only one not in production, currently owned by Chesapeake. In mid-2017, Radius optioned a 380-hectare claim called the San Pedro for a fairly expensive deal of U.S. $845,000 in payments over 5 years. And then it expanded the land package to include about 9,000 hectares in the vicinity. Now, the San Pedro claim has a sort of northwest, southeast trending system. It dips to the southeast. It's a mineralized structure. Radius believes it exists for 3,500 meters within that claim package. But the focus was a sort of a 300-meter segment where it was known that there was very interesting silver values, and that, of course, is the reason why it costs a whole bunch of cash to acquire it from the vendors. But Radius, being a prospect generator farm-out junior, last July optioned the prospect to Pan American Silver for $1.5 million U.S. in payments and $2 million in exploration over 4 years, during which Radius gets to operate the program. And the high payments are there, obviously, to cover the option payments for the San Pedro claim and to provide some extra overhead. The $2 million is not an awful lot. There is the risk that once Pan American invests for 65%, it just decides to stay 65-35, take over operatorship and cash call Radius to death while news flow completely dries up. But the deal also has an option where Pan American could elect to go to 75% by funding all costs to deliver a pre-feasibility study, and that can end up being tens of millions of dollars. So it'll be interesting to see which of these forks Pan American takes. So last year they did a drill program, and one of the holes released in December was very interesting. It was hole number 9, and it intersected 26 meters of 7 gram per ton gold and 517 gram per silver. And at the true width, which was estimated at 85%, the interval was 22 meters. Now, this interval was interesting because other holes had intersected, high silver but considerably lower gold grade. So this was mainly a silver system, which, of course, is the reason Pan American was interested in this project in the first place. That announcement did not create much of a stir in Radius in December, but when they resumed drilling in April this year, it started to attract some accumulators. And the first hole that they drilled, number 10, was 65 meters down dip. And on May 1st, they announced that it had yielded 44 meters of 12 gram per ton gold and 309 gram per ton silver. And the true width was, this time it was lower, like 77%, but in overall terms, 34 meters. So the zone was thickening and was getting a richer gold grade. So this is really, really interesting. And what's happening is there's a bonanza zone within this low sulfidation epithermal system where the gold is starting to drop out in significant numbers. And unlike it's very similar to the Shovel Nose South zone of West Haven, where we also have very high gold and silver grades. But there, the sweet spot, the bonanza zone, is estimated for now at least to be just sort of 100 meters in vertical extent. Here, in this part of Mexico, Radius believes the vertical extent can be 600 to 750 meters. And so they've already got a couple hundred meters of the sort of higher grade silver up top, and now maybe there's another 500 or so meters of down dip extent where the gold grade can be very significant. So this news took the stock from 14 cents the day before. Over the next 3 days, last Wednesday through Friday, it traded almost 20 million shares, and more if you include the alternative trading platforms, and reached a high of 46.5 cents. At that price, based on a 25% net interest and 91 million shares, the project was sporting a $168 million valuation, which is pretty good, since at the moment we just have a sort of a one shoot along the strike of this system. And the stock started to sell off this week when people realized, well, there's two other holes down dip, along strike, holes 11 and 12, that hopefully intersect something similar. But nobody's talking about it. There was no buzz. One newsletter group that follows it didn't really mention it either, which suggests that maybe there's not much happening along strike. And today, the stock dropped into the mid-20s after the company put out an update explaining that hole number 11, 12 in the south direction and hole 13 in the north direction intersected the structure, but did not intersect the same sort of mineralization as was controlling number 9 and 10 in that part of the system. And so the stock sold off because clearly they haven't hit the gold-rich bonanza zone. And based on the diagrams they've published, they're probably not quite deep enough for that level of the system. And the company has said, well, we are going to now focus the rest of our 2,000-meter program on smaller step-outs centered on this main chute where we have the high gold grades. And that's a bit problematic for the market because this system dips into a hill, and to get down deeper, you need to step up the hill and drill ever deeper holes, unless you're willing to drill vertical holes and intersect the structure at an oblique angle where you can get some fantastic intervals, but when you adjust for true width, it'll be a small fraction of that. There's also the question of, 2,000 meter budget. They can probably blow through those 2,000 meters pretty quickly, and this means that we're not likely to see the strike expansion from this program. So the market's become a little bit subdued because it will all depend on what they learn about the controls of this with these last holes of this program and what Pan American will do. Will it sit back and say, we'll wait a little while, or will they expand the program to start drilling these holes along strike and chase this high-grade zone to see if we indeed have a gold-enriched silver system on the Amelia project? So yes, definitely worth watching, and as a discovery type play. But we also have to keep in mind that this will be an interesting example of the potential downside of the prospect generator farm out model, where you give away the majority of the project and operatorship to another big company in the event that you actually manage to find something interesting with a prospect that the geologists of the junior generated.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juno Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, the James Bay play has gone awfully quiet ahead of key news from Midland in a week or so. They say the chalk marks did not lie. Should we brace for the worst?
Well, this expression, the chalk marks do not lie, is sort of an industry rule of thumb that when there is a lot of excitement and high expectations, and all of a sudden that excitement is no longer reflected in the markets, the prices fade, the volume fades, and you start to think, oh, the system, the market knows that the results that are coming will not fulfill expectations. And Midland has said that it expects to have all its results out by mid-May, which is probably not going to be May 15th because that's close to the Victoria Day long weekend. And I would suspect it might be May 21st, which is the day after Victoria Day. Or if they actually do have the results, it might be May 13th, which is the beginning of the week. There's another rule of thumb that you slip out bad news on a Friday afternoon so that and if everybody isn't there pounding out the stock the next day. But in this case, I think the company would actually avoid that because all the body language, everything that's happened, the BHP financing closing, Gino Roger in New York pounding the pavement, telling everybody that this is a great story, not necessarily to get them to buy right now, but to have their eyeballs on it, waiting for the results. So an alternative explanation is that because the company has kept such a tight lid, nobody has any idea what the core looks like, only that they completed their 2,400 meters in 10 holes. It could be that just because of this general bear market, the market's just pulling back because nobody wants to be a hero in the last minute. So it's, perturbing to people who are hoping for a great Canadian area play such as myself, but there are other things we can look at in the James Bay area. And yesterday I introduced to my readers a junior called Harfang Exploration Inc. And the story it has actually supports the idea that there is something going on in the James Bay region involving copper, which in the past couple decades of exploration has been overlooked. The CEO of Harfang is Francois Goulet, and he is both a structural and an economic geologist. And economic geologist is important because the era where just an ordinary geologist, without thinking about what is needed to deliver a mine, comes up with a prospect and wastes shareholder money. Economic geology is now a key part of the junior game. He used to work for Virginia Mines under Andre Gaumond in the past couple decades, and he tells me that the exploration strategy in this region was to check out any rusty rocks, which would be gossans, sulfides that have rusted, and that would generally be pyrite and pyrrhotite, and anything that had sort of quartz veining in it. And the goal was generally to find gold. And he says there's actually lots of rusty outcrops in the James Bay region, and they've all been hammered at by the geologists, and they've all been found wanting, like nothing particularly interesting in terms of base metals, and then of course it turns out the most interesting one, Eleanor, was an arsenopyrite which does not rust, and it was found without any of these sort of guides, no quartz veining or anything like that, because it's a metasediment hosted system. So the idea that there's like no base metal potential of interest in James Bay, that was an outcome of the strategy. But with the mithril, the reason this thing was overlooked so long is because there seems to be no pyrite or pyrrhotite associated with it, so there's no color anomalies that could have guided anybody to it. It was just a random government geologist happening to find an outcrop and taking a sample because that's what his job was as part of the mapping process. So we already heard that Azimut has the Munishiwan project, which is about 140 kilometers to the west of the mithril showing, where they have copper gold showings, not as fancy high grade as the mithril showing, but still interesting. And now we have the Serpent project, which Francois explained to me is something very unusual. When the company went public a year and a half ago, it started off with the Lac Martac project, which sits to the southwest of Quebec Precious Metal Corp's Sakami Gold project. And there they were chasing a gold system. That was the flagship project. But they also did work generating new prospects in the James Bay region. And the Serpent project this year, after last summer's sampling program, has now emerged as the flagship, and Lac Martac has been downgraded to a farm-out candidate for somebody who wants to chase the gold potential in that system. Now, this property was actually a hole that's sitting there all by itself, and to the west is the La Salle project. Actually, I've got myself a little mixed up here. The Sakami project's actually to the northeast of the Serpent project. Lac Martac is farther north. It's all by itself. But and then to the southeast is a property owned by Midland, whose name I do not know. They obviously don't think too much of it. But there was this hole in the middle, which Harfang staked. It acquired the land, and it's all mapped as tonalite. And he does what is called sort of float plane geology, where they like to fly over these vast remote regions and just look for anything anomalous in the rock patterns, the vegetation patterns, and then send crew to check it out. And what they noticed was a pinkish hue in some outcrop exposed in the middle of the Serpent project. And when they checked it out, they managed to get copper, gold, and silver values. No Maui values such as at mithril, but values up to 2%. And they also did some thin section work and realized, well, this is not really a tonalite. It's actually a metasediment. So it's something very different. And because Francois Goulet is a structural geologist, he also looks for sort of regional structures that could end up being controls. And he thinks there is something significant going on in the Serpent project. Now, it's 110 kilometers west of mithril, but it looks like something similar. No rusty color anomalies of any sort. The rock is pinkish for its own mineralogy reasons, and they'll go in there this summer with a prospecting program, which will guide their an IP survey if the prospecting shows something similar, like a large area of mineralization. And they're just awaiting the results of a 75-meter airborne MAG-EM survey that they flew in the past month, which will reveal a lot more detail about the magnetic character of this property than the government data. So this company, Andre Gaumond, who is the founder of Virginia Gold and who was part of Virginia Mines when it was absorbed by Osisko, he is the chairman. Jean-Pierre Janssen, who is the chairman of Midland, is also on board as a director. So there's a whole bunch of very interesting people in this company. The CEO is an actual geologist. He's also the visionary driving this. He's got some serious backing. There's not a huge amount of paper out on this company, and it has $3.5 million done in about sort of 5 million shares of flow-through and non-flow-through private placements earlier this year. No warrants attached. And even though they're sort of classified as a prospect generator farm-out junior, Andre Gaumond is the mentor, and he was the one who said, well, with Eleanor, this one's a keeper. To hell with the farm-out guys, the handlers and that. I'm going to keep this one and drill it on my own. And $750 million buyout later, plus a royalty that became the basis for Virginia Mines' absorption into Osisko Gold royalties. I think Harfang exploration is interesting in its own right as a James Bay explorer, but also if we do get confirmation that something special is going on in James Bay region involving copper, here is another focal center that is far removed from the original one. And this is the kind of thing like when the slave Creighton got staked wall to wall after Ekati was found by Diamond. It's the idea that it isn't just a local district, like let's say we get Red Lake and find that there's fantastic gold there, and then a small area around it gets staked, and you're either in it or you're not. This Serpent project gives me a clue that the James Bay Plan Nord region could become a huge Great Canadian Area play. But for now, as you point out, we need to find out that the chalk marks are indeed lying, that the results that are coming in a couple of weeks turn the light on for a major discovery play and vindicates BHP putting $5.8 million into Midland at $1.70, a 36% premium to the market, and an even bigger premium at today's price of $1.15 for Midland.
We'll have John Kaiser's closing comments right after this.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of PowerBand Solutions. PowerBand is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. PowerBand Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWBF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with John Kaiser. John, we heard a lot about James Bay and your hope for a Great Canadian Area play. Can you give Discovery Watch a new exploration story that has nothing to do with Quebec, nor any chance of spawning an area play?
Well, in late 2017, I introduced a bottom fish called Zephyr Minerals, based on its Dawson project in Colorado. The project's about 40 kilometers from Cripple Creek, but it has nothing to do with the sort of epithermal 40 million ounce Cripple Creek system that Newmont now operates. It's older rocks, it's Proterozoic rocks, 1.3 to 2 billion years old, and this project has been under exploration since the 70s in the hands of various companies, but it has also been the focus of small-scale mining all the way back to around 1900. And Zephyr Minerals ended up in charge of it in 2012 and has spent several $1 million on what they call the Dawson segment. It's an area where there's a horizon beneath a copper sulfide horizon, within which there are dilation zones that have been sort of through mesothermal type of processes been enriched with gold lenses. And this, unfortunately, dips into a mountain, something similar to a problem that Radius has with its Amelia project, where the zone dips into a mountain and it becomes impossible to delineate anything down dip. Here they figured out, 275 meters of the down dip potential, as big as 2,000 meters, that's all we can get with surface drilling. And the approach they took in 2012 was, let's see if we can outline a small resource, get a little small-scale mine going, and then once we're underground, we can start delineating more of these pods and turn this into one of these eternal operating gold mine that never has more than a couple of years of reserves ahead of it. And then they actually delivered a PEA based on about 135,000 ounces of 10 gram per ton gold, but realized that this was not really going to make it. Nobody was interested in bankrolling something like that. And they did have the option of direct shipping ore for toll milling at the Cripple Creek facility. But Newmont's basically said, that's potentially of interest to us, but we want you to have 500,000 ounces in reserve before we go to the trouble of setting it up to process your ore. So in the past year, the company went to work trying to find more of these pods along strike. Did not have huge success. Maybe increased the resource 10%. They haven't published an updated resource estimate. But they came up with this idea that off to the west, the structure of this Proterozoic lithology, and it's only about 5 kilometers wide, and it stretches for about 12 kilometers total. It takes a bend to the southwest, and there was something called the Green Mountain Copper Mine, and they checked that out, and there wasn't really any evidence of gold in that area. But they began to suspect that it's part of the same system, and this high-grade copper, it's sort of a narrow horizon. U.S. borax in that period of 1976 to 1986, thought that the copper horizon was part of a VMS system, and did a bunch of drilling to try and find the feeder zone, and eventually gave up. But the gold dilation horizon sits in the footwall of this copper sulfide horizon. And so they ended up staking all that land and picking up whatever patented claims private owners still held, with the plan of going in there and drilling this to see if they can find more pods of these high-grade gold zones in the footwall of the copper sulfides along that stretch of sort of 5 kilometers or so. And when the news got out, that the Green Mountain project had been acquired, they got a call from a Dr. Paul Spry, who is a professor at the University of Iowa, who is a specialist in Broken Hill type deposits. And Broken Hill is a 280 million ton, 18% zinc equivalent deposit in Australia. It is believed to be a SEDEX-style system that has been remobilized and undergone thickening and then grade enrichment in the process. And he had done a study of this part of the United States, which back in the Proterozoic was actually connected with the eastern part of Australia where Broken Hill exists. And he had determined that this area is anomalous for a mineral called granite, which is a zinc spinel, and this is a alteration product of sphalerite, the zinc sulfide, and it is a silicate where the zinc is very much locked up in it. It doesn't even assay when it's in your core because it is so tied up. It is not recoverable. And when BHP, started doing all its studies on the Broken Hill deposit, it realized that gannite, the zinc spinel, which runs 65 to 95% zinc, is associated with the Broken Hill system. And so they embarked on a Australia-wide program of just looking for this, anomalous gannite, and it eventually put them in the area of Queensland to the north. Broken Hill is in the southwestern part of New South Wales, and in an area where they did geophysical surveys, they ended up finding the Cannington deposit, which is an absolute phenomenal deposit, even higher grade, silver grade than BHP, but it was only Broken Hill, but it was only sort of 40 million tons, but it was found under 60 meters of much younger Cretaceous rock, basically garbage rock. So it was a blind discovery, but it was in the general area that the gannite guided them to it and gave them a focus. And Dr. Spry, he had done this study in Colorado, which where the general area was interesting, but the best, the 65 to 95% zinc spinel, it was focused on this Green Mountain area. And he had, a decade ago or so, he had a master's student do a thesis on this. And so when he saw a junior pick this up, he immediately contacted the company and started pitching them on, hey, can you sponsor my latest student to do a thesis on your Dawson segment, which is to the east and also in this general gannite and enriched area. And then something very serendipitous happened. There's a segment between the Dawson segment and the Green Mountain segment called El Plomo. There are a couple of north fault, south faults separating these two. This area is one that's been down dropped, and the other side's uplifted. And in there was a horizon of zinc, lead, silver mineralization. And apparently ages ago, when Mickey Fulp was still a field geologist, he actually mapped the whole trend of this narrow horizon. And U.S. Borax did drill a couple holes into it, several holes into it in 1979 and 81, but by then it had found the high-grade gold in the Dawson segment and dashed off to check that out. But they intersected some pretty good silver, lead, zinc mineralization. The zinc horizon was by itself, and the lead and silver were together by themselves, but in the same package. And but it was narrow, so it wasn't very interesting, and it just sat there. And because in the United States all information stays inside companies, doesn't get filed into the public domain, so everybody can think about it, Dr. Spry had no idea that this zinc horizon existed in between. And as they started to mull this all over, they realized that this could be the edge of a Broken Hill type system. And what we have is the far limits of a possibly substantial system backed up by a very significant zinc spinel anomaly in the area. So this is kind of like a really peripheral science homing a company in. And so the company went and staked the land that was available. They had to spend quite a few months negotiating with the state of Colorado on the state land portion. The other stuff was BLM. And they finally ended up doing a deal whereby they have to pay a 4% NSR, and this all goes into the Colorado education system. So now the company, in addition to chasing the gold potential in the Green Mountain segment, now they are focused on raising several $1 million, part of which will go towards a geophysical MAG-EM survey over the whole project, but with a special focus on the El Plomo segment. And if they see a big anomaly light up in there, they will then allocate the money, assuming they raise it, to drilling what they think is a Broken Hill type target. And it's the right setting. It's got all the bits and pieces. All that's ever been seen is the edges of it. That was small enough to not be very significant. Can there be an area play come out of this? Not really, because this is a sort of a fragment of old Proterozoic land that's exposed. There's very thick Cretaceous, younger Cretaceous rocks to the north, and there is other types of rocks to the south that are not prospective for this. So if they manage to tag a Broken Hill type system within the El Plomo segment, this will be of benefit really only to Zephyr Minerals, and there will be no great American area play emerging around it. So this sort of story is on its own. They've got backing from a Florida hedge fund that has a meaningful position, and a broker who is known as the godfather of Red Lake and Timmins has also became a supporter last year, did some financing. So keep an eye on Zephyr Minerals as a Discovery Watch play. If there is no mag anomaly that justifies drilling El Plomo, well, then they'll just carry on trying to assemble enough gold pods together on the Green Mountain segment to eventually feed Newmont's Cripple Creek facility.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been speaking with John Kaiser. His website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.